Hello, all. Welcome back to Not Just Lessons from Our Animals. I am Emma. I am an animal communicator, healer, and teacher. I am a guide for humans back to their authentic self. I am a messenger for Mama G and a conduit for the divine. And today I have a little bit of a sensitive topic that feels important to have a conversation about. So if you are someone who is not in a place to listen to have a conversation around death, um, skip this episode because this episode is about that specific topic. So I have done a lot of end of life animal readings and readings with animals who are no longer living. And for the, I hosted a Beyond the Veil experience event situation where it was really to bring people together to then be able to have a conversation, connection with someone beyond the veil, right? Someone who is no longer living, whether that be an animal, a person, or a guide, or your higher self, right? And as part of that, Mama G and the Divine both gave messages that were similar, different but similar. And I want to share Mama G's message with us because we do, as humans, we do tend to have a fear around death. Fear of the unknown, right? Might be the kind of like the core component of that of, we don't know what happens after death, and therefore it can be something that we fear because, well, what happens and is it okay? And are we going to feel okay? And then, if we add on the religious stuff of heaven and hell, and that, there can be this place of torture and, forever fire and like not go, reliving your your biggest fears or whatnot like forever. Yeah, it makes sense to why we might have this trepidation when it comes to death, whether it's our own death, it's someone else's death, it's our animal's death, right? And partially too, it might be about the death itself versus what's on the other side of it, right? Not wanting it to be painful, and wanting it to be something that, is peaceful and as least painful as possible. And I personally experienced quite a bit of death, like pretty early. I would say like third grade ish. Like a lot of a lot, a lot happened. I'd say like third to fifth grade. I lost both of my grandparents on my dad's side. I lost my great grandma and at least one family, like close family friend during that time. And then there's been more since then. So it was something that I got kind of desensitized to as a child because it became a norm almost for me. And I've had interesting kinds of experiences with death kind of that span the spectrum that I now have a very different relationship with it because I've had so many conversations with animals and some people that are no longer living, that there's like such a different perception of it. And also, just so many conversations with my guides and my higher self and, these other entities that it's like, oh, like that, it doesn't seem bad, right? To me, because of my own personal relationship with it. Now, if any of you are wondering, like, what does it look like or whatever, honestly, from my experience. Oh, I think that's a blue heron. Hi, blue heron. Hi, friend. um from my experience and like the feeling that I get is that there's multiple places. There's not just like one place, and none of them are bad. Like none of them are bad. And I would say almost everyone, if not everyone, uh, is like content and at peace there. And so, um, for me personally, it, I don't have, I would say my fear-ish around death is it being painful. And I have my own like major fears of different ways of dying, which likely are past life related in some capacity. Um, so that's like probably a different kind of conversation. All right, so let's talk about this message and then maybe we can go more from there. Something in my sleep. Okay, so this was a message from Mama G, aka Gaia, Mother Earth, and it came through on October 10th, 2025, if that is interesting to you in any capacity. So she says, Beyond the Veil is a really beautiful place, and I would love for you all to have a better relationship with it. Scratch that. I would love you to have a relationship with it at all. It is something so many of you fear, and that is because you fear mortality, which is a minuscule part of your journey. So many of you have been in a physical body countless times before, and yet each time there can be this deep-seated fear of the unknown of death. It is only unknown because you haven't gotten to know it. You haven't welcomed it in. You haven't gotten to know the other side of life because there is life beyond the veil. There is such vibrant life. It is not death. It is not cold. It is not ruin. It is vibrant, exuberant, and joyful. There is peace and community, so much community. During your physical life, get to know the life beyond the veil because it is there thriving, awaiting your return, because that is where it all starts and ends, where the cycle begins and ends. There's no escaping it, and many don't want to escape it either. Spend time now getting to know and forming a relationship with the life beyond. There is so much you gain from that type of relationship. There is much you will not be able to comprehend because of your human body and mind, but there is much you will. I look forward to watching you on this journey. Much love, Mama G. So I love that. I love that message so much because it's really calling us out and up, right? To have a like step into the discomfort of what we have a deep seated fear of because we don't have a relationship with it, right? It's just like um a person maybe that is uh in some kind of position of authority that we might fear because we don't know them. We don't have a relationship with them. We don't understand them. And when we get to know them, we get to understand them, we can have a different relationship with them. It can still be one that is like not great. However, the fear of the unknown of it is now gone, right? Because I think that's like such a big part of this fear is the fear of the unknown of it all, of like, oh my gosh, it ends and like it all ends. And I think it also depends on where our souls are in our own evolution of how much fear we might have of death, right? If we are newer souls, we might have a bigger fear of death because we haven't gone through it very much. Where if we are older souls, we might not have a fear of death so much because we've been through it so many times, right? And so it's again coming back to and understanding our own experience with it and knowing where we are, right? And acknowledging and being honest with ourselves of where we are, what relationship we have with it, what fear we have with it, and starting to step into that discomfort of saying, okay, what now? Like, how can I shift this perception that I've assumed and I've taken on? Maybe I've been conditioned, right? I've been feared into it because I've been told that there's this place called hell that I will burn forever. And like, I don't want that. Like, what, if I've sinned once, like, do I go there? And I remember this is like a little bit of a side note, and I'm not trying to like stir up any kind of religious stuff, but I remember starting to kind of go through my own religious, like, oh, are you sure? Kind of experience was I grew up Catholic, and I don't remember when this happened, but maybe high school. No, I'd say after high school. Anyway, it doesn't really matter when it happened. But I remember going to mass one week and they talked about okay, so it happened one or the other way. It doesn't really matter, vice versa. But one week they talked about how, God forgives all and that, we're all loved and it doesn't matter what you did, you'll be forgiven kind of thing. And then the next week was like, if you sin, you are a bad person. Like it was very the opposite of the previous week. And I remember sitting there being like, I'm sorry. Do you remember what you said last week? Like, these two things cannot be the same at the same time. Like, these don't make sense to me. How can you say that doesn't matter what you did, you will be forgiven? And at the same time, then you say next, like, if you're a sinner, you are not going to heaven. Like, those two things do not equate to me. And I'm not trying to have a conversation about this. So if you have feelings about this, awesome. I'm so happy that you have them. I'm not trying to have a conversation about it. So anyway, it's really allowing ourselves to come back to ourselves to say, where am I in this position and where do I want to be? If you're super happy with how you feel about death, awesome. I'm so happy for you. This episode is not for you. If you are not happy with how you perceive death and you want to have a different relationship with it, whether it's for your own sake or for the way that you perceive others who pass on, whether they be animals or humans, then like this is where we get to start, is where are we in that and where do we want to be? And then we can start to explore the different options, right? The way that I'm going to present to you may not be your way, right? And this is why, again, I feel it's so important that we all understand ourselves so that we can find our way to how we're meant to do all the things. The way that I'm going to present is the way that I created my own relationship with it. And it's not through animal communication necessarily, right? I'm not telling everyone to go out and become an animal communicator and then communicate with a bunch of animals who have passed on or with a bunch of people who have passed on. However, I think having a relationship with your higher self and your guides can have the same exact shift for you that, having a bunch of conversations and going through animal communication can as well. Animal communication, human communication, I kind of see them as similar and different. Yet if you can do one, you likely can do the other, if you can communicate. This was always my kind of perception, was like, and I know this is my way. So I'm not saying if your perception's different that you're wrong. I'm just saying this is my perception, that I was like, well, if I can communicate with a dog, why couldn't I communicate with a cat? And if I can communicate with an animal, why couldn't I communicate with a human? And if I can communicate with my guides, why couldn't I communicate with somebody else's guides? Right? It's just always been this like, well, I don't know why not kind of mentality. And likely because that is how my gift works, right? My gift is I can communicate with anything, or so far, anything I've tried, I've been able to communicate with. And so it's how can we have a better relationship with those who live beyond? Because let me tell you, I had a realization during the Beyond the Veil experience that part of our soul is beyond the veil, right? Our whole soul does not fit into these bodies. It's just not possible. It's why we have different experiences. It's why we don't remember everything, right? Our whole soul is not meant to be contained within one body. And it's why we have a higher self, right? It's why we have this ability to communicate with our guides and our higher self that is, kind of outside of ourselves. This is my belief. And so if we can start to cultivate that relationship, then we can start to ask questions, right? If we're like, okay, but I need to know what it's like on the other side. Like, like Mama G said, there are things that you're not going to be able to understand because of your body and mind and its limitations already, and that we're not meant to know all the things. in this body and in this experience. If we were, it'd be a very, we would already remember all the things and this would be a very different experience. And so the way you get there is likely going to be different, right? So you might explore this connection with your guides and your higher self and or animals, right? Anyone within the unseen, through meditation and communication in that capacity and calling them into a meditation and seeing what happens. And if you see, or if you hear, or if you feel, or, all the different ways that we can receive messages. Maybe you do it through journaling, right? And you have these conversations through journaling, through like in your head while you're out, maybe doing like a walking meditation versus a sitting in doesn't have to be in silence, but in stillness meditation. It might be through cards, right? Through card readings that you do for yourself, and you ask the cards to be, the conduit for your guides or for your higher self or for an animal who's passed on. And you ask the question that you want to know, and you pull the cards, and then you interpret the cards and see what comes through. And so there's so many different ways we can create this relationship with the unseen and with death itself. It's a matter of us deciding we want to. Right? It's a matter of us saying, yes, I understand that I want to have a different relationship, that maybe I don't have a relationship with it currently. It's something I actively avoid. And therefore, my intention is to have a very accepting and understanding and compassionate relationship with death. I want to understand it better so that it's not something that takes time and energy away from my present moment of living, right? This thing in the future, right? This fear of the future, which is death, which is no longer living in this physical body, is taking time and energy away from you living in this physical body. Isn't that wild? And so us becoming and having a different relationship with it allows us to walk in this world differently. It allows us to be living differently, more fully, likely, more wholly ourselves, because we're not in one foot in both areas, but also avoiding half of ourself that is living in the future of this, like, what if, and I can't believe that's going to happen, and da 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 da, right? So allowing ourselves to come back to having a different relationship might mean starting to have a relationship at all, and acknowledging and stop the avoidance of it. And if we have a fear of death for someone else, then it's, asking that question of why. Why do I fear them leaving so much? What is that triggering within me? What is that saying about me? What is that bringing up within me? And what do I feel like I'm losing when that happens? Because I will tell you, because of all the animals I've communicated with who are no longer living, they are around. They are active. They are still sending you messages. Yes, it's in a different way. And yes, it can be harder to see and understand and decipher because they're not right in front of you. And also, in some ways, it can be easier because you're not seeing a behavior or something and interpreting it. You are able to just freely receive the message from them without having to interpret it, unless it's like through signs and stuff, right? But I mean, I can't tell you how many times an animal is given a certain behavior that's been interpreted one way, but was actually sending a very different message. And so allowing ourselves to walk differently and have this broader perspective, and allowing ourselves, again, to walk into the discomfort, to step into the discomfort for ourselves, and then also depending, if we have it for others as well. Also, I was going to share a couple of crystals because I remember like creating some crystal descriptions for crystals when we receive them into the store that are to do with death and relationship of death. And so if you're a crystal person, maybe having or working with these crystals, which working with them might simply mean carrying them around or getting a bracelet with them or a necklace or earrings or carrying them in your pocket or meditating with them, right? Sleeping next to them might help you in this pursuit of this different experience. So one of them is bloodstone. And one of the things is that it can help bring acceptance of the prospect of physical death, especially when confronted with a terminal illness. And then also a million other things as well. The other one is ruby zoisite. And I'm not saying these are the only two. These are just the two that I created. Not creating the stone, just the crystal description. So ruby zoisite is a great stone for those with terminal illness and struggling with issues of life and death. So again, and they're also and ruby zoisite is also good for those who are grieving. So this is, there's lots of different ways that we can get to the same result. It's just a matter of tapping into yourself and understanding what that is for you. And, I love crystals. So I'm always going to go and see if there's a good crystal that can help us along the way as well, whether it's through meditation, carrying them, all the different things. I will also say I love a good clear quartz because it's an amplifier. So if you're wanting a gentler energy and you don't want to be blasted and you're somebody who's very sensitive, then do not get clear quartz or don't pair it with clear quartz. And if you're like me and you're not super sensitive, and so you're like, you sleep with all the crystals and you sleep totally fine. Or, you have all the crystals in one area and you don't feel any different really, or, you wear a ton of crystals and you're not like highly influenced, then I would recommend also clear quartz because it's a master healer. It clears blockages, it aligns chakras. It also amplifies the other crystals. So if you're wanting a big boost, then, you could get bloodstone or ruby zoisite and some clear quartz and be on your way and just see kind of what happens. And if you don't know if you are sensitive or not, feel into clear quartz is always great to have. You don't have to always put it next to something. It can be its own personal crystal that is really healing all on its own. It brings like a very light energy. All right. Well, I think I'll leave it there. So if you are someone who is, has a relationship with death that is not the one that you want to have, here are some ways to start changing that relationship with it, because that's likely the only way that it's going to shift is if you start to step into that discomfort to then shift it. All right. I hope this was helpful, and I am sending you all so much love, and I will talk to you soon.